Today is May 10th, 2022. This is the Upper Dublin School District Finance Committee, and I will call the meeting to order. We have most of the Finance Committee is here. Mr. Henderson is unable to attend tonight, and several other board members, along with members of the administration. First off, we have a presentation from ICS and CMTA. I'm not sure who's taking the lead, but go right ahead and get started.
Thank you for having us tonight. We're excited to give you guys an update on the storm damage at Fort Washington and the Gisa project. I'm Megan Early. I'm the project manager with ICS, and I have with me Michael Logan from CMTA, Bill Slaughter, and Phil Solomon from ICS. So the agenda for today, I'll give an update on the high school and the exterior work and the Fort Washington interior, and then I'll turn it over to Michael to give an update on the Gisa project. I'm not sure, can you make it larger or you don't? If not, no biggie. Oh, there we go. So starting out at the high school, Hirschberg Mechanical is working on the insulating, the ductwork on the rooftop. They plan to be done this work by the end of the month, so the end of May. Dewey Engineering is working on the roof drawings for the high school as well. The roofing contractor has already released most of the flat work material, so these permit drawings are really just for the soffit and fascia. Moving over to the athletics, all the batting cages have been completed. Varsity baseball, the outfield fencing and foul poles have all been installed. Player safety fencing is largely installed at varsity. We're just missing about 20 linear feet of fabric, which should be coming soon, and that's at third base. The design for varsity backstop, the baseball backstop, and the ball control netting is under design at varsity and JV. This required structural engineering drawings because the poles are about 30 feet high. So once those design drawings are completed and approved, the lead time for that material is about 8 to 10 weeks. So the varsity baseball field won't be completed until about end of August. The chain link fencing along Spark Drive on the JV baseball side is planned to start next week. At Cardinal Stadium and the tennis courts, we met with Mr. Leckman and Mr. Lester on Friday to go over the lighting proposals we received. I believe one of the board members asked about the lead time last meeting, and we did get an update from the manufacturer. The current lead time is 12 weeks for those fixtures, and then also about 4 weeks for installation. And Bill will give an update on that shortly. We received the traffic and signage proposals, so we're reviewing those and hope to have that finished in the next 2 weeks. We've received proposals for the tennis court repairs and the repaving, so we're hoping to get that work underway and have that completed by August. The architect, Architera Landscaping, they have completed the permit drawings, so we're just waiting on the lighting fixtures to be finalized at Cardinal Stadium and the tennis courts to get that submitted to the township. Moving over to Fort Washington Elementary School, Twiding's contract is being reviewed by ICS's and the school district solicitor. So once that's completed, that'll be executed and they'll mobilize immediately. They have started on some of the shop drawings though in the meantime. The classroom casework, they submitted color selections. That's being reviewed by the architect. Once we get that approved, we'll get a lead time finalized from them, but it's looking like 10 to 12 weeks, which fits into our time frame for that first phase to be back open by January. The library casework, that's about 90 days. We're also working on shop drawings for that. Mobilease is submitting their permit drawings for the modulars to the township this week, and we're also having a pre-construction meeting on Friday to meet them on site and go over that work. Turn it over to Bill.
Thank you, everyone. Before we turn this over to Michael to talk about the Gisa agreement, I wanted to talk a little bit about the lights. So initially when we started looking at the stadium lights, we did not have any design drawings to work from. So I tasked the architect and the manufacturer, Musco, to provide us with a design that is based upon what the standards are for lighting at the stadium, typically nowadays. Unfortunately, the lighting that was at the stadium was not of that magnitude, so the insurance company did question. There was a substantial amount of additional fixtures required, in addition to additional poles at the tennis courts. So we then went back to the manufacturer and asked for an updated proposal based upon what was in place previously. And we received that proposal, and we had just received some updated photometrics. So in reviewing the photometrics, we see that it's fairly close to the new lighting versus the old lighting. So the consideration and why I'm talking to you about this is once we clarify a few issues with photometrics, we may come back to the board and ask you, there's a delta between the new design and what was in place of about $53,000. So once we get a couple of the answers on the photometrics from the old system, if we feel that's adequate, we're not going to come back to you and ask about that. But if there's a situation where we feel it's best and beneficial to go to the new lighting, we would come back at the next meeting with backup and information and ask you about if you wanted to proceed with that additional $53,000. So we should know that information within the next week, and then we will update everybody on that. So I just wanted to kind of give you an update on where we were with the stadium lighting. Does anyone have any questions on that?
Does anyone have any questions? Art?
12 months, 12 weeks and 4 weeks. But when does it start? When does the clock start?
As soon as we give them approval to proceed. So it could be next week. If we feel everything is acceptable and the old lighting system is okay, we will give them that nod to go ahead. If we feel that we need to come back and see you next month and look for that additional cost, then that would delay that by another 3 or 4 weeks, yes.
Well, I think every week matters. I mean, is there a way to get an approval
We can.
if we need to for Monday night?
We could pre-approve this kind of thing with a ceiling if that seemed to be the thing to
Recommendation.
do.
Yeah, we can prepare a motion for Monday night that allows the administration to approve up to a certain dollar amount with notification to the board. So we can make sure that that's on the agenda for Monday night.
That'd be great. I mean, 53,000 is a good amount, but these lights are going to be there for a long time. I mean, we still be using the old lights, and I don't remember when those lights were installed.
Yeah, the warranty on those lights is 25 years, the older lights and the new lights. So yes, it's a substantially long life device.
Right, and it's totally different technology in terms of what we had, and you indicated it requires some additional poles? And
In the new lighting scheme, yes, it will require additional fixtures and additional poles to get to that lighting level. We're almost capable of achieving that level. There's just some perimeter areas that we want to qualify because those perimeter areas are egress. If we feel we can meet the lighting levels on the field that are acceptable and the egress lighting is acceptable as well, then we would proceed with the old lighting schematic and the price, which is $53,000 less. If we feel we're not going to meet those standards, then we would come to you and ask if you would like to spend the additional money.
Okay, with the lighting, I thought we were talking about, was there a new scoreboard that?
That's not part of that, but yes, there's a new scoreboard.
And that's separate?
That's a separate issue, yeah. This is just for the stadium and tennis court lighting.
Okay, I haven't heard too much about the scoreboard. When, do we have a time period for that?
The scoreboard is about an 8-week lead time. We just got pricing in on that, so that'll be submitted to the insurance company.
That would probably be done before the lights.
Probably, or at the same time. Same contractor that's going to install the lights is going to install the scoreboard.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from anybody else? So I have a question about the photometrics you're talking about and the standards. So are these the lighting standards that we're talking about, are they, like, is that PIAA? Who's establishing?
So, yeah, there's no PIAA standard for lighting. What you have is state building code minimums. So
Right.
there is no maximum.
Okay.
So this is based on common design practice right now is 50-foot candles. What you had in place before was somewhere around 40-foot candle average. So what they do is they take the photometrics for the entire field, and then they average them out, and that's how you base your design on. You have to meet either a 40-foot candle limit or a 50-foot candle limit.
I see. Okay, the reason I ask is because lighting, of course, is a safety concern, potentially, and if there were standards we had to meet and those, we were on the fringe and something were to happen, et cetera, it's not a place to necessarily skimp. But, yeah, I mean, my feeling is if we meet modern building code, then we don't need to go beyond that, but.
Yeah, the standards that we have to meet are going to be egress lighting, and that's between 5 and 10-foot candles. And we're close. I'm just waiting for some additional photometrics in front of the concession stand,
Okay.
and then we'll be able to make a recommendation to you for that.
Can't that potentially be addressed with lighting outside of the main stadium field lighting?
It could be, but there's also peripheral areas on the track that are an area of concern right now.
Okay.
We may be able to do it with the old design with maybe 1 or 2 additional fixtures, which would be much less than the 53,000. So if we could do that, that would be our recommendation.
Right, okay. So my only thought is I just don't want to skimp if it's a safety concern in any way, but yeah, as Art says, the timing is of a concern. So we'll address that on Monday night.
I thought there was 1 or 2 lighting poles that are still out close to the stadium that tornado knocked down. Are there any?
There are street light poles
Yeah.
that we have ordered that are not in yet. We did place 2 temporary poles that we borrowed from North Penn School District. You were gracious enough to lend us some pool heaters that when you got new pool heaters to North Penn. So North Penn was gracious enough to lend the light poles back to Upper Dublin. So there was a good marriage there, and we were able to make that happen on both accords.
Okay, so all the lighting that's in the back of the high school is functional, is working?
So the poles that we could get working are working.
Okay.
Everything is safed off. The 2 temporary poles are installed. We're probably about another 8 to 10 weeks away from the new poles arriving, and they'll be installed as soon as we get them.
Thank you.
There's only 1 or 2 foundations we have to repair and some wiring where conduits were broken.
All right, anybody else? All right, thanks, Bill.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Michael?
Next slide, please. Yep. And like Megan said, my name is Michael Logan. I'm the project manager for CMTA for the Gisa scope. And over the last month, we've made a lot of progress in the Gisa scope. So at this point, the design is now complete. We have fully engineered design drawings ready for construction, and bid documents have actually been distributed today. So for in the investment grade audit, that's set to be delivered on June 3rd. And that's not going to be just the findings in the investment grade audit. That'll actually be the bid results from the bid process that we're going through right now. And so through this whole process, we've been meeting with Mr. Leckman and Mr. Lester to make some key design decisions along the way to help push the pace of this process. So we wanted to go through a few of those decisions with you all today. Thanks. So first, the HVAC system type. The system type we selected is the water source heat pump system. So not only will this enhance the comfort of the building, it'll also greatly improve the indoor air quality in the facility. So it's an efficient system, and it offers improved maintainability, and it's a reliable system for the long term for Fort Washington Elementary School. And 2 options are being considered here during this bid. One, a boiler tower, a more standard option for the heat pump loop, then the other, a more renewable geothermal system. And there are advantages to both of these systems, but in designing and bidding both of these, we'll be able to compare the costs associated with those advantages and be able to come up with a more flexible scope selection when that time comes. So now in the space-by-space design, starting with the classrooms, the cafeteria, and the library, the unit that we selected here is a vertical style floor set water source heat pump. And so each space is going to have a dedicated unit designed to bringing in just the right amount of outside air for that space. In each space, and each unit will also have a MERV 13 filter. So throughout the building, the indoor air quality is going to be greatly improved with the installation of this type of equipment throughout the building. Also, there's no ductwork associated with this equipment, so we're able to maintain that existing ceiling height. It actually expedites the installation, helping with the construction timeline as well. And a big consideration throughout the whole process of this design was parity and consistency throughout the building. We want to make sure that the final product here is a consistent building and it looks like new after the project is complete. So as part of that, in the classroom areas, you can see the insulated panels along the exterior walls. That's where we would propose setting the new water source heat pump and then replacing the cabinetry on either side to match that in the storm damaged area, giving it that finished look after the project is completed. So next we have the gym and the large group instruction room. Again, this is a vertical water source heat pump. It has energy recovery capabilities. And the big considerations here were that they're larger spaces, oftentimes controlled a little bit differently than the rest of the building and scheduled differently. So we want to make sure that the humidity and temperature is being controlled properly and that the units are running always when they're supposed to be running. And then a design consideration here is that we're able to take advantage of existing infrastructure. So the pictures you're seeing here are the gym unit that are located in a mechanical penthouse. So the new unit would be placed where that existing unit is, reconnected to existing ductwork, and then that helps with the cost-effective measures in the schools as well as the improving the construction timeline. The next would be the administrative area. So this is the where the principal and the nurse's office is, and we decided with packaged rooftop units for this. So this, again, we're able to really separate this area from the rest of the building. And the reason we do this is we want to be able to operate this section of the building on an adjusted schedule away from the central plant so that we're not having to heat and cool the rest of the facility when really only the administrative area is being used. And other advantages here are we get to maintain that existing ceiling height, and because these are roof set units, we're not floor mounting units in the space, so we're not taking up any valuable floor space in that area. And those design considerations really cover the majority of the facility. There are other measures being taken and additional equipment being installed, one of those being a kitchen makeup air unit. Currently, the kitchen is not conditioned, so we'd be installing a dedicated unit to the kitchen that'll bring in fresh air, conditioned air, that'll really make for a healthier environment for the kitchen. Next, we'll also be installing split systems, electric heaters, and exhaust fans in areas for the space type as they're needed throughout the facility. And then as we're developing the HVAC system, and we've also been in design for other energy conservation measures associated with this project. First, HVAC controls. With all the new equipment that would be installed, we would want to upgrade the old pneumatic controls to a more current system. And the district's done a great job of implementing a supervisor server. So we would be able to take the new controls from Fort Washington Elementary School, include it in the supervisor server, and that gives the facilities a common interface to control all equipment across all of the buildings that are on that server. LED lighting upgrades are also included in this design, so that's replacing existing fixtures with new fixtures. A solar array is in development and design and is out to bid. And so this would be implementing solar array on a portion of the school that received the new roof. And the costs and benefits associated with producing solar energy on site will be contained in the investment grade audit, as well as other ECMs that will be identified. Next slide, please. So as far as next steps, in the Gisa project, like I said, the designs have been complete, the bid documents have been distributed, and so now we will be awaiting bid results here in the next couple of weeks. And so we already have a meeting scheduled with Mr. Leckman and Mr. Lester to review those bid results. And this process from start to finish is an open book process. So all of the bid results that we'll be receiving will be the same numbers that you will see. So hopefully this transparent process will allow for you all to have to make the most informed decision as possible for this project. And then we also understand the importance of the timeline here. So while all this is happening, we're also in preparation we're preparing a Gisa contract that will, of course, be pending the Financial Committee's recommendation upon the scope selection and when we see all of those bid results. And then for the claim project, I'll pass it back over to Megan.
So next steps for the claim project are to get Twining's contract executed, and then they'll submit the building permits and get started there. We're going to continue installing fencing at JV on the Spark Drive perimeter fencing. After that, we'll head over to the Cardinal Stadium and do that perimeter fencing. We're also going to be finalizing proposals for the lighting, the tennis courts, and the traffic signage, as well as submitting permit drawings for the exterior work and the roof to the township. Anybody have any questions?
All right, any questions for Megan, Bill, or Michael? Art? Oh, Jenna, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Well, my question may not be so much for our guests. I'm trying to figure out what's kind of the next step for us. So is it at the next Finance Committee meeting, we're going to be talking about the bid results that we got in? That's kind of the next progressive step?
So yes, that's the goal, is we have bid results coming back. We have a scheduled meeting. So the goal is, if everything falls in line, we would be bringing a recommendation back to the Finance Committee in June.
The water source heat pump system, I'm not an HVAC person, so I don't know what these are. There would be a box, that's the picture that goes in each classroom.
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Any noise from the box? Is
So-
it typical to have these boxes in classrooms today?
Yes, so this is this unit is specifically designed for classrooms. It's a classroom unit. It's typical. There were considerations in being able to reduce the noise by putting units above ceiling and other considerations like that. But with the existing infrastructure, we thought this was the best solution. So it is a quiet unit that would not interrupt any of the scheduled school activities or instruction.
Right, and each unit would have its own MERV 13 filter that would have to be replaced probably every 6 months?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, and then smaller spaces, let's say the nurses' room. What do you put in there?
So that's involved in the packaged rooftop unit.
Vehement.
The nurses section. So the nurses' room, if I believe we're talking about the same space, is connected to the principal's office.
Yeah.
Is right next door to it. So it would be the same, it would be that packaged unit. And we actually have designed 2 different rooftop units to serve the different areas. One would be focused on that nurses area, and the other, the remainder of the offices and workspaces in the administrative area.
Okay, and solar, you're looking at that option, or is it likely we're going to have some solar panels on the roof?
Simply looking at the option right now. We have designed the solution, and we're going out to bid, so we'll be able to see real cost data that comes with the solar. But just like everything else in this project, we'll be discussing that with Mr. Leckman, Mr. Lester, and in the Finance Committee, and ultimately, whether it's included or not will be up to you all.
I mean, just when we have the cost of electric these days that we're going to be talking about later today, I mean, any kind of an option, I think, for solar might be beneficial, depending.
And if I could add on that, so Michael's already shared some information with us, right? And I think the data that he's talking about, the consideration needs to be how much does it cost to install these things and what's the payback period, right? So it's certainly something we wanted to explore, but the payback period will really be the deciding factor on if it's worth it or not, along with electric rates going up.
Right. And then, Dr. Yanni, is there any ideas that they have that weird large room? Any ideas in terms of what to do with that room? Is it going to remain the way it is?
The Star Lab will probably remain the way it is. We'll most likely be doing something like taking that room offline at some point. That room is oddly shaped, and for a number of reasons will probably be offline.
Anyone else? I have a couple of questions. Megan, I think this one might be for you. Trees, so the trees, especially the trees behind Fort Washington, is that scheduled, are they scheduled to be replanted, or what's the process for?
Tree grubbing is included at the high school between
Okay.
the property fence in the back by the Cardinal Stadium. As far as Fort Washington, we have included fencing along the basins, but I do not believe that tree grubbing is included at Fort Washington at this time.
Do we have any plans, Bob or Steve, or to do anything about trees at Fort Washington?
We don't have any definite plans. We've been focused more on cleanup and restoration. We have started conversations with Shade Tree Commission, PTA, community groups. So our plan is definitely to start putting trees back.
Okay. And speaking of Shade Tree Commission and other township, so has the township approval process been smooth for so far?
So yeah, when we met with the township back in January to get Fort Washington reoccupied, I actually called the building inspector today to let him know where we're at with the storm damage project and let him know that our permit will be coming soon. So they already reviewed the architectural drawings that were designed by Michael Johnson originally.
Okay. And Michael, if we did geothermal for the water source heat pump, where would the wells go?
The wells would go next to the parking lot, kind of adjacent to the existing playground area next to the parking lot where there's a remnants of a baseball field there right now.
Okay,
And
yeah.
so going back, so that's a large open space and it's close to the mechanical room. So there were a lot of advantages with going with that space. And it also, let's see, yeah, so there are just a lot of advantages going back with that space.
Okay.
Yeah.
We talked through that potential option with Mr. McAleer. One of the concerns that he brought up, but where there's a will, there's a way, is during this project with modulars out back, there's not going to be much space for recess. However, we talked about short-term inconveniences for long-term wins. So, if we put geothermal wells in that area will be dug up and torn up for a while, but it will go back to being a field and a place for kids to play.
Right, okay, and the other thing, following up to what Art said, I noticed you mentioned potential for electric heat. I assume would be a supplement in areas that need it. We're not talking about electric heat for the building.
Absolutely. So this is talking about a storage room here and there and in a restroom where we need a little bit of extra heat that's not served by the central plant specifically.
Okay,
Yeah.
because, I assume we all know electric heat is, on a large scale is rather expensive, but of course, then if we go solar, and the solar is beefy enough to supply a heating system, which requires a lot of power, then electric heat becomes a lot more attractive.
Would each classroom have its own thermostat that can be controlled by the teacher and overridden by Lester?
Well, no, it will be monitored. It'll be monitored by main systems. I think anytime I've been in a building, and correct me if I'm wrong, and anytime I've been in a building where even you can move, individual classroom temperatures a couple degrees, there wind up being issues. It's better to just be able to universally control that.
All right, any other questions for the team here? Jen?
Okay. The area where the geothermal units are going in, is that baseball, the remnants of the baseball field that's, are we making any plans to, because you know the history of that field, Bob, it's like very swampy. Is there anything while we're digging this all up that we can do about that swamp?
Yeah, so after the geothermal well field, if we go that route, after it's drilled and everything is prepared, then we would be going back with reseeding and preparing that area to like new conditions for a new play area with new grass and all of that. But we would not necessarily be going back with the baseball field as from discussions with with Mr. Leckman, Mr. Lester, and the principal, it's not typically used as that right now, and it's more of a play area for an open space for the kids.
Right, and that would make it worth it if we could fix that field up.
We would have, at that point, whether restoring the field, we'd have the opportunity to regrade to make sure the water's not ponding there and flowing down towards the
That
natural
would be
drainage.
terrific. That would be great. Thank you.
So would a decision be made, Andy, geothermal or not geothermal by next month?
I believe so, yeah. So geothermal, I think, is our first choice, and they're going to do a test well and make sure it's feasible in that area. And I think if it's feasible, that would be our
I
recommendation.
know this building is geothermal. I think there's 55 wells. Do you know how many wells would be needed for Fort?
For Fort Washington, there's 60 wells that would be needed.
I must be wrong about the high school. How many?
Yeah, the height, I don't have the
5?
exact number, but it's in the hundreds.
Yeah,
It's
like 5.
significant, yeah.
Okay.
Anyone else? All right, thank you all for coming and for the update. Moving on, we have a strategic planning update. Steve?
There's no formal presentation tonight. What we wanted to do was just provide a brief update. We're nearing the completion of our strategic action planning process. We took a look at the goals that we had in our previous set of plans, and as we construct our new set of plans that we're calling Vision 2025, because the plans will end and we'll renew new plans in 2025, we, Mr. Leckman facilitated a group of interested folks in budget, finance, and facilities. So the goal areas really focus on a number of things. Making sure that we have fiscally sound budgets so that we're being cognizant of things like the Act 1 index, that we're making sure that we have transfers to capital projects and make sure that we have multi-year capital plans, and a funding plan to go along with the capital plan, so that as we do projects, we have access to that capital plan instead of always or needing to go out and borrow more debt. We also talked about maintaining transparency around the budget development process. I think we would all agree that the way Mr. Leckman lays out all of his budget documents and the way that we talk about the budget each month is transparent, and we want to keep that that level of transparency because consistency over time builds trust, right? And we want to let our community know that not only are we doing everything that we can to make sure that kids have a great education here, but that we're also being fiscally responsible to our families and our residents that don't have children in the district. We also talked about making sure that we have financial plans in place for ongoing infrastructure for technology. As we know, the world of technology is constantly evolving, and we want to make sure that we have plans in place to make sure that we evolve with it. So I'm anticipating at our June Education Committee, we'll do a full review of our strategic action plans. So that information will be out on our website, but we just wanted to give everyone an update and to say thank you to Mr. Leckman for leading the finance facilities and budget finance and facility group.
Any comments or questions?
I just wanted to thank Dr. Yanni and the entire administrative team for a process that I really enjoyed. Many of us were on various committees, and I thought Ms. Kitten did a great job in facilitating the HR. And I think the last meeting we had was very fruitful, and I think it's a very good process.
Thank you. I should mention, there were 4 groups. At the last meeting, it was an in-person meeting, and the groups got the opportunity, they had the opportunity to rotate through the plans that the other groups had created, and there was some really good constructive feedback from all of the groups on each other's plans.
And just in the name of transparency, since we were talking specifically about the financial team, Jenna and I both served on that team. Any other comments or questions on that? All right, Thank you for that update. Mr. Leckman, any announcements?
No announcements this evening.
Thank you. We have minutes from our April 20th meeting. Have members of the committee had a chance to review, and are you prepared to move it forward?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. Moving on to our long list of reports and recommendations organized this month largely in order of, near-term to long-term. Starting with mobile lease agreement.
Yes, we have quite a bit to get through tonight, so let's get started. So I started the first two, which are related to the presentation that you just heard tonight for the work that we're doing for the storm damage. So the first one is the mobile lease modular space lease agreement. So again, we are looking to bring over our modular classrooms that we have at Sandy Run Middle School. So those will wrap up when the building's closed for the year. We'll bring it over to Fort Washington. We are sticking with mobile lease. The agreement provides for the transfer of 15 of the 20 classrooms that we have at Sandy Run. It will be for next year. So the agreement spans from July 22 to May 23 with the option to extend monthly beyond that, which is how our current agreement reads. The reason that we structured it that way is because the claim portion of the work that we're doing there will span to May 23. That's what the insurance company will cover fully with the proceeds. They'll cover all the one-time costs. They'll cover the monthly fees through May 23. If we approve a project that extends beyond that, June, potentially into September, likely not, but June might be our exposure, we would be responsible for any months beyond May 15th, 2023, at a rate of $17,150 per month. So again, it's on a KPM state contract, which allows us to pay for it directly versus the insurance company, but we would get reimbursed from the insurance proceeds for the project. Questions about the lease agreement?
Questions? Jenna? No?
Well, I think you just answered my question, so this is fully reimbursed by insurance, right? Okay.
And then the units is listed as one, that's the full 15 ones, right? Yeah.
Correct on both of those, yes.
Jeff?
Andy, if we did have to extend it, what's like the notice period we'd have to give to modular lease to make that happen?
I'm not sure what the number is. I think it's 60 or 90 days, but we should know that basically next month. So there's no risk of running into that.
Great.
Art?
Just wanted to clarify the motion itself. At the end of the first sentence, at the same monthly rate of $17,150 per unit.
In total, so that we have all of the units there. There's 15 classrooms, and it's $17,150 per month for all of the
units,
classrooms.
for all the units.
The others? Okay, members of the committee, are we prepared to move that forward?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Agreement with Hirschberg Mechanical.
Correct. And again, so these are ratifications. Again, there's a lot of these agreements that are moving quickly with the storm-related work. So Hirschberg, this was the work that Hirschberg did over the spring break. Most of that scope was in final conversations and negotiations with our insurance company, basically right up until the week that they started, just to get the language straight and make sure our insurance company was comfortable with it. So this work is, what Megan mentioned, largely done. They're just wrapping up some of the final insulation on here. So this is a ratification of that agreement just to make sure we've got it all documented and in place.
Comments or questions? So to clarify, when these agreements are paid directly by insurance, we need to have, the contract is still with us, and so the board needs to approve? Or what's the reason why, if we're not paying for it, we're approving it?
We want to own the contract as the district, so we want to make sure we have everything in it that we need it to say. We've got warranties in place. We've got all of the language that we want to have because we own the work ultimately that's done. So we want to own the contract. The insurance company has language in there that they will pay the bill, but ultimately it's between us and the vendor.
Understood. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. We're prepared to move that one forward?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Campus Workflow Suite. Prakash, I'm guessing?
Good evening. So Workflow Portal is an add-on to our existing membership with Infinite Campus that will allow us to automate many of the events related to attendance. The portal will allow us to leverage features such as checking in students when they are late, to allowing parents to submit absences for students in advance. And additionally, it will allow us to push out communication based on events such as new enrollees. So all of the staff members that will be part of that student's experience here will be notified of that student coming into our school. So that information is shared across all of the staff members that will be part of that student's journey. Workflow will help automate many aspects of attendance, preventing inaccuracies, delays in processing students who are returning from being absent or waiting in queue to be processed as being tardy. The training for this portal will be in two parts. The first part will focus on our attendance secretaries. The second part will focus on our administrative staff, who will then be able to build the back-end pieces so that attendance pieces can be processed. Once the building administrators are trained, then we'll set up communication for our families that will highlight the features and how to use the parent portal feature of Workflow. I would like to note that our staff who will be part of this process all had an opportunity to preview Workflow so they understand what value the portal will add to our existing attendance process. They all spoke highly of the portal, and they see value in us adopting the Workflow portal. Questions?
Questions, Titya?
When this is all up and running, do you expect to spend less personnel time on this whole process?
It will save significant amount of time because a lot of the things will be automated. So instead of students waiting in the attendance office to be checked in, they can scan their badge and it automatically marks them as being tardy, gives a date, time stamp, and then off to class they go. As far as training on Infinite Campus side, it's as easy as just checking a box, and it allows the feature for us to be accessed. What we need to then figure out are the parameters around, for example, defining what does it mean to be tardy versus when is a student considered absent. So those are the things that we need to define. So we can start training as early as late June, early July.
And it also allows more just-in-time information, right? Everything will be...
It's all live.
All live,
Yep.
yeah. Great.
And when do we start, and how do we train parents?
So communication will be shared from building administrators once we figure out what this is going to look like for us, along with highlights of key features, like a user guide of the parent portal itself, where to access to submit their child's absentees, or if their child is going to be late. So that information will be communicated once we get our training.
Okay. And it's a one-year agreement with an annual renewal?
Yes.
Okay. Any,
So it'll become part of our information system moving forward.
okay, so we won't see it as a separate thing. It'll
No,
just be
it'll be
part of
all
the Infinite
together, yep.
Campus renewal.
Exactly.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, members of the committee will move that forward?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Prakash. Sandy Run update. Bob?
Yes, we are in the final stretch for the building to be turned over to us. Substantial completion is still on schedule for May 18th, and at that point, that's when we'll start applying for the temporary CO. Furniture scheduled to arrive June 6th, and then June 20th is really when the building would be completed at that point. But substantial completion will allow us to get in there. It'll be ours to start setting up, moving in. Everything is coming along very quickly right now. The gym floors are finished. The bleachers are installed in the main gym. Padding on the gym walls went in today. The auditorium, the seats are all installed in the auditorium at this point. They just have to do a little bit of carpeting in the aisles. Kitchen's ready for a health department inspection that they've been getting ready for. Solar panels have been going on the roof. I was up with the fire marshal today. They did a cursory area inspection, and they're probably 50% the panels in. So that, all the frames that they sit on are on the roof already. So that's moving very quickly. Startups of the equipment and training are ongoing. We've successfully did training for the generators, the UPS systems. For that, we'll control over our MDF closets, IDF closets. We've been through that with our staff. So we really are in a good spot. And you walk in, it's a very busy place right now. If you walk around the perimeter of the building, there's been significant progress on the backside of the cafeteria portion of the building where all the temporary construction was. It's been regraded. We expect the sod to be set in the next 2 to 3 weeks. They'll maintain that, so hopefully we'll have that in a year. It'll be good playing surface, sturdy playing surface. We'll be able to walk on it in the meantime and go out there, but we really want it to sit before we try to play any sports or anything active on that multi-purpose field. Curbing's in, sidewalks are starting to go in. We're really making really good strides to getting our temporary CO.
All right, any comments or questions for Bob? Bob, can you, just for all of us, can you define, so the substantial completion is a term that is a threshold for us. Can you define what that means and what other thresholds are coming up?
Substantially complete means the building is usable for the owner at that point. They're still going to have punch list items. That's a daily work in progress with the architects, the engineer. They constantly have somebody on site, and they're looking through the nicks in the walls, a light that's not working correctly or something missed. So that's what goes on in substantial completion. So everything, the building will be usable for our use to start moving in on May 18th. So, but they still have work to do. And there'll be activity in the building. It's not 100% finished, but it is usable at that portion, that point where we could be in the building. In the final completion, of course, we know there's going to be little issues that drag on for time, but the punch list items, most of the punch list items should be completed by that June 20th date as we're moving in.
All right, Art.
Fill placement. I remember Reef was very clear that it was going to cost us $150,000, and that's what we put in the budget. We're still waiting. Anything new to report?
So I'll take that. There is nothing new to report. I've been asking Dewey about the fill placement for about 2 years now. We had a construction meeting this morning, and Zach is the person we meet with, but really this was, not to point fingers, but this has been on a Reef's plate. A Reef negotiated that agreement with the township, so I have no update. That's why it's blank on the budget portion. It's still an open item. The township has still indicated that they are bidding the project. They are looking at approving the project and will be able to move the fill there. What is unknown is the timing of that. So they said September is the scheduled start of their project, possibly sooner. And the cost associated with that is unknown. They said $150,000 at one point, but the language now is $150,000 or whatever the actual costs are. And the actual costs are likely to be above $150,000, and we do not have a number from Dewey at this moment.
I thought I remembered reading something from the general contractor that they were hoping that the soil would be removed by June. So we're not going to get there by June. Any implication of site work?
We've asked those questions, and we've been told there are no implications of it being delayed. That they know that they have a substantial amount of work to get done. Parking could potentially be impacted, so we have not been notified that there would be any delay in any of the work if that's not moved till September.
All right, anyone else on Bob's portion of this?
What I will say in terms of timeline, we've had to do a number of things in the building that we were rushed to have decisions made. Otherwise, we were going to delay. And here we are at the end of the project, or right up against substantial completion, and we don't see we don't see any delay. I think once the new, once we have a meeting with the new township manager and facilitate some further discussions there, but Mr. Leckman is correct. We have been asking, we do have it in writing multiple times from Dewey, and we do have it in writing in emails from the former township manager and other township personnel that it was 150. So if we get to a point where it's going to exceed that, obviously we'll let the board know.
Anyone else? Jenna?
What's the timing for getting our final lead score? Do we know?
My understanding is it's not until the entire project is completed, even the site work.
Okay, okay, so the very, very, very end, okay.
One of the things, Ms. Evans, around the lead score, as we were looking at that scorecard, we made sure, well, our professionals that were working with us made sure that even if we fell short on an area, that there was enough buffer that we would exceed the number of points we needed for lead.
Anyone else? All right, so as we jump on into the budget portion of this, I'll just note that at the bottom of Dewey's report, you've updated the contingency number, Andy, but it's still not updated on his report.
Correct. So we coordinate budget information with Dewey on a periodic basis. So mine's much more in real time. So the reason for that is because the main change that I made here is as we start to close out line items of the budget, so financing is a good example of that, and that was the change that I made here. So we finished our last financing for Sandy Run with the most recent borrowing. That'll settle at the end of May. The financing fees associated with that, we knew that was an area of opportunity where we would likely come in under budget. We know where that closed out now. We know what the final fees are. So what I did was I adjusted the actual budget down for bond financing to what the actual costs were, and then took the balance that was left there and rolled that back into the project contingency. So that's why we don't match. That just happened. I just made that change. The next time we coordinate with Arif, his report will line up with ours. So that was one of the major items I wanted to note. The other item, just to note here, there's a couple items on here for the next two items for cameras and furniture. So we did have a project budget of about $1.8 million for furniture and equipment. With these most recent purchases that are recommended, they were obviously planned as part of the project, but the furniture and equipment budget is looking to exceed by about $80,000 over the budget, just with everything that's been required for the building. So the two items that are next on the agenda, which we'll talk about, are obviously critical to the building, especially the cameras, but we are trending slightly over budget. You don't see it on the budget report per se, because I'm reporting actual expenditures. I'm just notifying you up front that will likely trend slightly over the $1.8 million budget.
And I'll give Mr. Leckman a little bit more credit than he's going to give himself. Originally, when the project was approved, there was a line item for furniture and equipment of only $800,000, woefully below what was going to be needed. At that point, we took $1 million out of contingency and we put it in furniture and equipment so that we would be in a better place. So while it appears that we're going over the budget, I still feel very comfortable. I think Dr. Ortiz and his staff, Mr. Leckman, Mr. Lester, our entire executive leadership team did a really good job of outfitting the building, not cheaping out, but buying good furniture and equipment for the new school.
I remember those discussions, Dr. Yanni, Mr. Leck, about 800,000 and upping it by an additional $1 million, and thank you both for that vision to see that. It was woefully under budgeted.
Go ahead.
I'd just like to make a comment too that early on when we had opportunities to walk through the building, I remember us talking about areas where we really felt we needed additional cameras. So I'm really happy to see that more funding has been put in that area, because that becomes a safety issue as well. So I'm really, even though we may be over, it's money well spent.
Any other comments on the Sandy Run budget? Or anything else about Sandy Run, for that matter? All right, thank you for that update. No action to move forward. Let's jump to item E, the new camera systems.
Yes, we're looking to purchase the cameras themselves for the new middle school. We've already purchased the mounts. They're installed by the electricians. We wanted to wait for the purchase of the cameras. Once we found out that camera warranty is for 1 year and it starts when the camera arrives on the site, not when it's in use or so. We didn't want to be in a situation where our cameras were out of warranty the day we walked into the building to use it. So we delayed that purchase. It's for $96,296. That is with through Access Security. Access provides our card reader system and all of our other cameras, all the licensing agreements that we needed for the recordings. So that's maintained through them. They are CoStar's vendor. They will program the cameras, put all the IP addresses in, so it's just a plug and play by our staff when it shows up, because when we set the cameras up, it's up to us to decide what exactly we want them to look at and to focus it. So that'll be done in conjunction with the Sandy Run staff and making sure that when we put the camera in, it's getting the exact things that they want to see.
Comments or questions?
When you set up those cameras, do you also collaborate with the police department, or is that entirely internal to the district?
This was internal to the district. We will collaborate them with Access.
And does the new camera system, is it just localized to Sandy Run, or is it integrated into a district-wide system in some way? Or
It is a district-wide system, yes. So I could pull the cameras up on my laptop right now, and I could look at through all the buildings in the district from one spot.
And so it's the same system? That
It
we
is the
had
same
elsewhere.
system, yes. More advanced cameras, the picture quality compared to what we installed 5 years ago to what we're installing today is amazing, the differences.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, we'll move that forward.
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. Moving on to the furniture.
Yeah, so the ancillary furniture is something that Breslin did. So they went through the building and did all of the classroom and office and furniture in those areas. This is kind of the last stuff to close out the building. So this purchase covers outside of the cafeteria, there's a patio area out there. So this puts seating outdoors for about 48 students in the outside area. It covers cafeteria trash receptacles to make sure we have all of what we need in that facility. And then it covers the nurse's office, specifically the furniture in there, like the student beds in there that are needed in that space. So the total cost of that is $38,417, almost $418.
Comments or questions? Art?
So the outside furniture, is it secured to the ground? How do we know what we're doing to make sure it doesnn't walk?
So it's not, it's not secured,
I don't believe it's secured.
but we have cameras, so if anyone absconds with the table, we should be able to the cameras are that good. I'm not trying to be glib. They're that good. And we haven't had anyone try to do anything with the outdoor furniture at the current Sandy Run, right? So.
I prefer the flexibility of it.
Oh, yeah,
but
yeah.
just
Yeah,
curious.
absolutely. And just as a reminder, just like all other furniture in the building, it's ADA accessible. So those tables outside, students with mobility challenges might be in power chairs or have other challenges, there is ADA seating outside.
Real quick, isn't that area, it's sort of fenced off though, isn't it? The area where it would go, am I picturing the right place or no?
So just last week, they poured the sidewalk, so right outside the cafeteria windows, there's a strip of a sidewalk, so it's literally right, it's the windows when you're looking out at, yeah.
Okay. For some reason, I pictured that there was like a little low fence there for some reason, but.
No,
Okay.
no, that's sort of down.
Okay.
It basically, edges up to that multipurpose field we were talking about, so it's just easy access out to the field. So you wouldn't actually want a fence there, I don't think.
And there's a pergola or something under that, or is it open? I know we were talking about that at one point.
So we have it is a pergola. It's like steel structures that's, yes, sunshades.
Yeah, we did originally have a much
Yes.
grander pergola
Yes.
in one phase of the design, but that got pared back. So it's more of a sunshade now. It doesn't reach all the way out to the outside of the patio.
Right, okay.
And that furniture, that outdoor furniture, that, just to follow up to Art's point, that lives outside, right? It doesn't come in every day. Okay. Any other comments or questions on any of this furniture? All right, so we'll move that forward.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Jumping into monthly financial reports.
Yeah, so starting with the treasurer's report, I just have a couple items to note. So in the packet, it's 50, but it's at the top, it's labeled treasurer's report. The revenue, just to note, is trending right in line, 93% received compared to last year, the same amount. Expenses, 72% year-to-date, right in line with the prior year of 70, slightly ahead. In the other financial reports, the assessment changes, you'll note that it has not changed since last month. We actually just received the report late this afternoon because the meeting's earlier this month. So we will update that and make sure it's included for the board on Monday. There was very few changes that we received this month in April. EIT, April showed another significant increase, earned income tax. So it was 53% higher than the same time last year. So again, we've typically been trending around 8 to 10%. So it's a little bit of an outlier. Again, we don't see any details behind earned income tax. We just track how the money's trending. And then transfer tax, it was another strong month, 42 transactions totaling $125,000 in revenue. So things continue to trend strong as far as local revenues. Page 61 is the projections, or if you're following along in the packet, it's the report I reviewed last month, and it's updated now with April actuals and then estimates for May through June. So there are no material changes from what I presented to the committee last month, but you'll note that, as I alluded to, the expenses trended down, or we spent more than $325,000, or the variance came down by $323,000. As I explained, the all other category only captures purchase orders that are currently in the system, expenses that are already booked. So we're trending and projecting things we know, utilities being a good example of that. But in the all other, there are certain things that are purchases that just haven't been made yet. And I sort of alluded that would trend down as we move towards the end of the year. The actual surplus projection increased slightly, and that was primarily because our local revenues increased by $373,000 more than what we projected due to the strong month in EIT. Transfer tax and delinquent tax trended significantly higher than what we had projected, as I already noted. So last month, you'll see that item I on the agenda, and I won't jump ahead. I'll just note that last month I talked about proactively recommending a transfer to the capital reserve based on the strength of our local revenues. So you can see local revenues trending about $3.7 million better than what we projected for the year. And that's sort of the recommendation as we move forward to a capital reserve transfer, which we'll talk about later in the meeting. So I'd be happy to answer any questions on the monthly financials.
Comments or questions on the monthly financials? All right, I do have one. In the new, I call it the new report, the revenue and expense projection report 2 months ago in the year, so the estimate for May and June for wages is way more than two normal months. Why is that?
Yeah, so at the May, it's June is the big month. So teachers choose how they want to get paid out at the end of the year. So teachers get paid over 26 pays, and most of that comes either in a lump sum at the end of the year, or they continue to get paid out through the summer. So that's why those months look unusually large. It's primarily related to the teachers and how they get paid out with their contract.
Okay, thank you.
And that would be standard on an annual basis. You would see that happening.
Right. Any other comments or questions on the monthly financials? Okay, so we'll move that forward?
Yes.
Yes, all right, thank you. Our regular monthly budgetary transfers, anything to, all right, any comments or questions on the budgetary transfers? All right, we'll move that forward. Yes?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Let's talk about that transfer to capital.
Yes, so included in the packet is a memo documenting my recommendation to complete a transfer to the capital reserve prior to the end of the year for $3.7 million. $3.7 million, again, as I mentioned, it's a very specific number, but it ties back specifically to our revenue projections, and more specifically, the projection for local revenues for 21-22, trending about $3.7 million above the budget. So we've discussed all the reasons for that positive trend. So the board will then consider an additional capital reserve if this is approved at the end of the year as we go through the audit. So this is proactive before the end of the year. The board would then have the ability to look at end-of-year results and determine how we want to use the end-of-year surplus beyond that $3.7 million, whether it be additional transfer to capital reserve, additional commitments. So the board has commitments for real estate assessments and medical benefit increases. So the ultimate goal here is to continue to proactively transfer funds to financially plan for near and future facility capital needs that we know exist and need to be completed. So that's my recommendation. And just a quick reminder about capital reserve, since we really only talk about this once or twice a year. When the board approves a transfer to the capital reserve, it is a one-way transfer of funds, so we can't transfer money back from the capital reserve. Funds can be transferred based on unused appropriations from the year during the current year or surplus funds remaining at the end of the year. And it's not just one time, this can happen multiple times, as I've mentioned. And the fund is used for funding capital expenditures, facility improvements, replacements, or additions to facilities. We use it for the purchase of school buses. And it also allows flexibility to pay debt service for new construction. So while it is a one-way trip of funding to the capital reserve, if there was ever a need, which I would not lightly ever recommend that, but if there was ever a need, we could make debt service payments out of the capital reserve fund if we determined that was ever an essential need. So what questions can I answer?
Jenna?
What's the benefit of doing some now and doing some then at the end of the fiscal year?
Yeah, there's some benefit to doing now rather than carrying a significant surplus into the next year. There's benefit from a standpoint of we have board policy that limits how much, that keeps our unassigned fund balance between 5% and 8%. So it makes sure to check a couple of boxes along the way. I also think it's good just to, rather than waiting till the end of the year, there is value in transferring it now. We can set it aside. If it's in there, we can set it aside and invest it. I mean, we can do that in the general fund too, but if we've committed to put it aside, we know we don't need it right now. In the general fund, we're conservative through the end of the year, so it gives us some flexibility.
Any other comments or questions? Art?
Yeah, so back in December, I think we already transferred the 1.9 million. So this would be in addition to that. And it's only looking at revenue right now. That's where you got that 3.7. Significant savings hopefully will occur also in expenditures. So that's why we can look again at the end of the year or after the audit to see if we can transfer additional funds, because I think it's so important, as Mark has indicated, that we continue to make a significant investment in the capital reserve fund. And when things are going well in the district, it really benefits us to move whatever we can into capital reserve, because we know what our needs are, 30 million over the next 10 years. And so I really hope that when we look again after the audit, that we can even transfer additional funding.
It's
40 million in the next 10.
30 and 5, 40 and
30
10.
and 5.
30 in the next 5 years, right? Okay. 40 and over, yeah.
I just want to clarify, just for everybody's sake, when we talk about transferring after the audit happens in the fall, well after the end of the fiscal year, but we're still talking about, that would be a transfer of money from the 21-22 budget, even though it happens in the fall, right?
It gets recorded as a transfer in the current year, so it would look like it happened in 22, 23, but it's based off of the reason that the board is allowed to make that decision is based off of the final surplus from the prior year.
Does it make our fund balance look out of sync? Because it will sit in fund balance until we make the transfer?
Fund balance doesn't change until we close the audit at the end of the year. So we give you a running report here, but no, the fund balance, we wouldn't create a new fund balance report until we close the year out.
And we did the transfer?
Correct. I mean, it's sitting in our cash reserves right now in our general fund, but when you talk about fund balance and the report, we wouldn't actually close out a report on fund balance till we finalize the audit.
And quickly thereafter do the transfer, or do the transfer at that time?
We typically get draft financials, and I think when we have our draft financials, we would bring a recommendation to the board. So yes, it should be happening almost in parallel.
Thank you.
And so we have board policy that recommends maintaining an unassigned fund balance of 5 to 8. We also have a requirement at budget time to not exceed 8%. That's just a budget number. If the end of year turns out to be above 8%, that doesn't violate that PDE requirement, right? But it would violate our policy, am I correct?
We would be out of line with policy, correct?
Right, yeah. Okay. Jenna?
Because I think I may have asked this question as well before. The PDE rule is as of the time you set the budget, correct?
Correct. That's how the reporting works. It looks at when you set the budget. We project year-end cash flows, but yes, it's as of when you set the budget.
It's nice to have this problem to have to think about this. Yeah. Darlene?
I just want to also comment, I think it's really important that we continue to set aside money to fund what we know is going to take a lot, and we've already borrowed enough, and we need to be very strategic as we look down the road. So transferring now, I think, is the right and prudent thing to do, because I think we're going to continue to need to do that. So we just need to have that as a mindset. So I appreciate your recommendation for us to transfer this money now. And then we'll be looking when we have anything left over to transfer more, because $40,000 has already been indicated, and $30,000 within the next 5 years, when we only have 8 or 7 or something like that. So, I mean, we're really far away from what we need. So even though, people may think, oh, we have this extra money, maybe we can do something else, we really need to keep in mind what these capital projects are going to cost us. So I do appreciate your recommendation.
All right, anybody else? Okay, so we'll move this recommendation forward?
Yes.
Yes, okay, great. Now we're going to jump in, and we'll certainly have more conversations along the lines that Darlene just talked about. Now let's talk about the proposed final budget. Actually, before we get into that, Andy, I'm sorry. So we have 2 items here. We have the proposed final budget, which Andy will, and maybe Steve, I don't know, will participate in a presentation to frame this for us. The next item will be the proposed final draft resolutions, which are the actual resolutions that we would pass on Monday night to set the budget. Let's wait until we get to that item before I'll do our usual go around the table and try to pin everyone down to a number. But we'll do that with item K, not with the current item. All right? All right, go ahead.
Before we get started, even though tonight we're going to present our proposed final budget, work on the budget continues until the point of adoption. So nothing in this presentation is hard and fast numbers. And that, the work really does continue until until the board approves the budget on the 20th of June this year.
So after 9 months' worth of budget work, and Ms. Sherpier and I were having a conversation before the meeting about closing the budget out in June. Budget's one of those things that while we close out one year, we sort of never stop the budget process. We're always between at least 2 or 3 years. So we're at sort of the tail end of 9 months' worth of budget work for the planning of the 22-23 budget. So tonight, I'll review the proposed final budget. It'll be a higher level review since at the last 2 meetings and many meetings prior to this, we've gone through the details of the budget. The last meeting was focused on expenditures. March, we focused on revenues in detail. And then additionally to this, I just like to mention there's a budget narrative document included with this agenda item that has 27 pages worth of details. So anyone that's interested in more information and all of the details of the budget, it's all there for anyone that wants to see it. So on the timeline here, sorry, Brooke, you can stay on this slide, Brooke, it's fine. On the timeline, this has been a standard slide. Only one step really remains on our timeline, and that is for June next month is to approve the final budget, which is the final step in the process. So just starting with a quick summary here. Again, as I was very pleased to be able to present last month, we still have we're in a position to have a truly structurally balanced budget where revenues match expenditures. And what is placeholdered in the budget right now is a 2.3% tax increase, as we've been talking about. So the budget is developed, just for anyone that might be listening that's new to the process, the budget's developed using a needs-based budget philosophy. And what that means is, as the business office, we set the process, we create the templates, we create the organization, and then building principals, department directors, executive leadership team develops the budget based on the needs of each building and department. So every building and department knows what their needs are. They develop it. We review it, we provide feedback, we ask lots of questions, and that's how we get to this point in the process. Staffing also uses a similar approach to needs-based. So when we look at staffing, we're looking at enrollment projections, class size guidelines, middle school and high school scheduling. So when we're talking needs, we're talking every aspect of the budget that's looking at what are the needs to make sure we're serving our students. Next slide, Brooke. So budget summary here from a numbers perspective, you can see that our proposed final budget includes revenue of $111,266,000, which is an increase of $250,000 from what I reported last month in April. And I'll get into some of the details. It includes expenditures of $110,446,294, which is a decrease of $568,000. And then based on these changes, we were able to, as we discussed last month, include a plan transfer to the capital reserve in the amount of $819,706. And that is such a unique number because that's basically, when we look at the difference between revenues and expenses, that's the number to create a structurally balanced budget with no deficit or surplus. So there is no planned usage of fund balance needed to balance this budget. Next slide, please, Brooke. So when we look at the changes, you can see this slide lays out what changed from last month, and that's what I'd like to focus on, just so you know. We covered all the details, but from a revenue, we increased revenue by $250,000, and that's coming from a couple of different places. So EIT, again, we continue to look at trends. I told you this month how we're 58% higher than the same time last year, so while we're not plugging in that whole increase, we're looking at how that trend affects our 5-year average. So I added $42,000 based on the increasing trend of our 5-year average. Foster students is something that we receive a subsidy back from the state for. So we don't learn really our foster student counts and what that looks like until closer to the end of the year, what our allocation is going to be. So we were able to add $150,000 into the budget for what, again, students that we're serving this year will receive that subsidy in next year's budget. We currently have around 10 foster students in the district, which is higher than our prior average of a little less than 5. Property tax reduction is something I'll get into more, but that's the state allocation for homestead exclusion. The property tax reduction increased by $495,000. Again, I'll cover that in a little bit more detail. And then the revenue decreased by $479,000, primarily due to, again, homestead reduction is a straight pass-through from the state. We receive the revenue, but it gets passed straight through as a reduction to property tax bills, so the district has no control over how that money is used. So more state revenue, less property tax revenue, it essentially nets itself out. On the expense side, we had an increase of about $250,000. There were significant reductions of medical benefits. So we talked about last month, we had 0 in the budget. Our final rate for medical expenses, which we will probably never see again, I will go on record and say that, of minus 5.9% for medical and prescription rates next year. So that took $560,000 out of the budget. McKinney-Vento, so again, those are our students, homeless students, which we're providing transportation for. Again, we've got placeholder for everyone we're transporting today. We did have 2 students return, so that we were able to take $64,000 out of the budget. And then debt service, based off of the final issue that we just had, a bond issue, it came in better than anticipated based on PFM's projections, so we were able to take $40,000 out of the budget for next year. And then increases, again, we will talk more about electricity on a later budget item, but we added another $137,000 for electricity. As the rates for electricity, the market is just so extremely volatile right now. You see it's in line with gas prices. You see gas prices go from $4.25 one day to $4.50 the next day. So we have a recommendation tonight. We'll talk about that in more detail. The high school band trailer is one that this was a damage from the storm, and we went back and forth. We thought initially it could be repaired. It turned out there were parts missing or broken that could not be repaired, so we need to purchase a new high school band trailer. So we will not receive that this year, so we needed to add it to the budget for next year. The insurance, just like your car insurance, it's a depreciating asset. We don't get full coverage for there. That's not part of our property insurance. It's part of our auto insurance. So we received about $5,000 back, so it'll cost about a little less than $20,000 to purchase that based on quotes that we have. And then capital reserve, as I noted, we were able to add $819,706 for a planned transfer. Next slide, Brooke. Thank you. So property tax increase, this is the current version of the budget maintains, as I noted, a 2.3% property tax increase. That would be about a $164 increase for properties at the median assessed value of $197,250. As I noted in here, just to provide an alternate option or something else to look at so you understand, again, this is a placeholder. Any final changes would have impacts to the budget, either in a negative or positive way from revenue. So if you look at 2% as a potential option, just to see how that impacts the budget, each 0.1% reduction would reduce about $85,000 of property tax revenue. So a reduction to 2%, as an example, would be a reduction of $255,000, and that would mean a reduction from, at this point, which is, again, to Mr. Serta's point, nice to be able to have this conversation, would be a reduction from the planned transfer to capital reserve, even though we talked about how essential having such a transfer is. It's also important to note, again, that any change to this, a reduction, is a reduction forever. So it's a reduction of potential recurring revenue out into the future. So just some things to keep in mind as we're discussing what the final rates would be. And at 2%, it would be a $143 increase for the property at the median assessed value. This is just our chart that shows our trends out into the future. So as we talk about impacts of decisions made today on the future, you can see here that the blue line is our expense trend. The orange line is the revenue at a 2.3% property tax increase and revenue at 2%. So those two line items are, again, the scale of this chart does not do it justice, but each of those lines between the orange and gray are $255,000 apart. Over the long run, a change like that is very, very manageable. But you can see out into the future, we grow to about a $4 million deficit 5 years out from now which is what we talked about in detail at the last meeting. Next slide, Brooke. So this is a review of, again, just a chart we've shown before. This is Act 1 property taxes, or the Act 1 index compared to actual property tax increases. You can see here, this reflects the 2.3% that's in there. So orange line is actual tax increase, blue line is Act 1. So even at 2.3%, the tax increase is on the lower end of historical tax increases. And the board, if approved at that rate, would be below the Act 1 index for 6 consecutive years. And also able to, you can see we're diverting further away from the Act 1 index. As the Act 1 index is growing, inflation, salary, wages are continuing to push the index up. We've been able to hold our property tax increases fairly flat. This slide is the Homestead Exclusion Act. It gives you more information here. So we just recently received this information from the state. And since the act was passed in 2008, 2009, the state has only funded they calculate a fully funded property tax reduction allocation for each school district. And they've, over the period of time since it's been in place, only funded that at 80%. This year, and I didn't hear anything about it until these numbers were actually released, this year was the first time the state is funding that allocation at 100%. So that's the reason for the large increase. It doesn't necessarily mean there's more money being generated from the gaming revenues. It just means that the state decided to fund that at 100%. So again, the board has no control over that funding. It's a state allocation. There's a pre-prescribed usage of that. It flows through to reduce property taxes, and which is a good thing for property owners, but it does just directly offset our property tax revenue, so it's really net neutral to our budget. Each homeowner of an approved homestead will now receive property tax relief of $417, which is an increase of $69 over the prior year. And again, this is the same amount for each property owner, regardless of the value of their home. Even at this point in the process, and even when we approve a final budget in June, there will be a number of items that will be unknowns. And again, we've used all of our best methods, trends, projections, to project everything to the best of our ability. This is a list that's very similar to what you saw last month of all of our open items. Again, staffing models, just to note, so staffing models cover everything we need to service students. When I say staffing models, it's moving staff around to meet needs for next year. If we have enrollment spikes over the summer, like kindergarten would be an example. So we feel like we've got everything covered. So if anything, that might trend down, but that's why it's open at this point. And then all of those other items, electricity, we hope to sort of cross off tonight when we talk about electricity. But these are our major open items, and many will likely remain open as we close the budget, especially related to assessment appeals and our commercial properties. And then the last slide is just a new link that I added, and it's something I will continue to build out. It's something I thought was important. We get asked by certain people, where do we keep all of our budget documents? So I just wanted to add this in here as a link for anyone looking at our budget document. This link takes you right into online on our website. We keep all of our budget presentations. We keep the budget narrative. So this is a one-stop shop of where everything that I've talked to the Finance Committee and board about this year, it has the budget town hall presentation in there. It's everything we've talked about related to budget this year, just as an easy way to click and access that. This is a sheet that I think I'll continue to build out as I find other important resources that I think should be linked to this document. And certainly if there's any recommendations from the board, I would be happy to hear that. So that's my recommendation. As Mr. Sirota alluded to, I'd be happy to take questions on the presentation, and then in the next agenda item, we'll talk about the resolutions, and you can guide a discussion on tax increase.
I just want to chime in on that last slide, just to be clear, that link may be new in the presentation, but it's not new information. There are, 8, 10 years, there's a lot of years back of that information on our website already. So it's a pretty handy reference. I do use it regularly. So, comments or questions on the budget presentation? Wow, Art?
Go ahead. You gonna go? All right.
Yeah.
It's in here, so I'm just curious. So under, when you're highlighting the changes from April, we have the 10 foster students and we get $150,000. Is that money, what happens to that money? Does it go to specific programs or?
It's just a general revenue item for the district. So just like any other state, any other state funding that we get. So like a special education subsidy that we receive from the state, we don't have to use it for any specific purpose.
Thanks.
Art?
Couple of observations. I wanted to bring up the Homestead Exclusion Act in relationship to the median tax increase. So, because again, the community, they don't see a difference. The bottom line is they look at their tax bill. So what they'll see is 164 versus 143, but then you subtract $69 from both of those amounts. So you would end up, the tax median at 2.3% would see a $95 tax increase. And at 2%, it's a $74 tax increase. So that's what they would see. They don't understand the homestead. My concern with that homestead is next year, if they go back to 80%, we're going to look really bad when we increase taxes, whatever rate, because that money's going to end up, they're going to be paying the difference of the reduction of the homestead. So that's, I just want to make that point. Will you take questions now on the narrative, or are you going to talk about the narrative later? Mark and I spoke earlier today for quite some time about the narrative and some details. I think I just wanted, Andy, if you can expand, we had a discussion too last month, I think, about the $10 million that we just borrowed and how that money gets split now, partially into debt service and partially into capital. Well,
It will all go into, so it's a similar borrowing to Sandy Run. It'll all go into debt service. So the capital reserve fund that we talk about, which is where we're going to transfer money to, and the debt service fund all fall under what PDE's chart of accounts is capital reserve. So it's Fund 30. Within Fund 30, we have sub-accounts. So capital reserve is one sub-account, and each one of the borrowings had its own separate sub-account. The $10 million that we just borrowed will go fully into a capital debt service sub-account. We will then spend money out of that account for both Sandy Run to finish that project and Fort Washington to fund that project. Within that fund, we will have multiple different accounts which separate in our account code structure what gets used to pay for Sandy Run and what gets used to pay for Fort Washington. So we won't take money and transfer it into the capital reserve, the 11.7 million capital reserve. It will reside in this fund and we will account for it based on which project we're spending the funds on.
Say at the end of the Sandy Run project, we have $1 million left. Can we use that $1 million to also pay for Fort Washington?
Correct, and I think that's part of my recommendation is whatever's left over from Sandy Run, then we would use to fund our project at Fort Washington. Absolutely. And that's how the bond issue is written. It's, both of those are listed specifically, but it also allows us for any other capital projects that may come up that the board approves.
That was the last bond issue, right? That we used that language. It was unique in that last bond issue?
That's a very standard language that
So
I
it's
think they
used
use in bond
throughout.
issues to give the board flexibility, because every project doesn't end exactly to the dollar of the budget.
But for the total 80 million that we borrowed, we have that language. Gotcha. Okay.
So just to clarify that point, in the treasurer's reports, you have a slide which, for other funds, which includes the capital reserve fund, currently in this month's report, the capital reserve fund, the 2021 bond fund, there will also be the 2022 bond fund. But in the budget narrative, it talks about basically 5.5 million of that going into as a revenue item for the capital reserve fund. But that's not, is that, so are we actually transferring money from the 2022 bond fund to Fund 32, the capital reserve fund, or that's just sort of all included? Let me find the page in the,
So it's on the bottom of page 13 of the budget narrative. It's page 14 in the document, and it lists it there, but it says the entire project is estimated to cost $10 million. It is estimated that $5.5 million will be paid from bond proceeds. $4.5 million represents the maximum estimate required from the district capital reserve fund balance.
so that's not the page I was thinking of. There's a page, here it is. So page 15 of the narrative. The green column shows under other sources is a $5.5 million revenue item in estimated 21-22.
So that's a fair point. And again, I think that's illustrative only, but again, which is why I haven't noted as point 2, but maybe I can put the note over with the 5.5 million, is the note that bond proceeds assumption, final Sandy Run borrowing of 4.5 million. So I understand that, you know, I could see how it could be confusing being on this schedule. It will not be transferred to our capital reserve fund.
Right, it'll live in the 2022
That is
bond fund.
correct.
Okay. Wait, yeah, right, so we're clear on that one? Yeah, okay. Did you have more you wanted to cover, Art? Okay, I have a couple. The starting unassigned fund balance listed on page, it's probably page 13 since you were just, page we were just looking at. Go back. I have way too many tabs open. No, it's page 12. So starting unassigned fund balance for the general fund for 22-23. That is, or actually, let's look at 21-22. So the budgeted unassigned fund balance for 21-22 shows 10,317,000. That's more than that for budget. That doesn't make sense to me because that's more than 8%. Is that? I'm confused where that number, that seems to be too high to me.
So that's what we closed the year at, not when we approved the budget. So
Okay.
after the year was closed and the audited financial statements were done, that reflects what the actual end of year amount was, which is
Okay.
different from when, again, back to Ms. Evans' question, we won't know what the end of year amounts will be until after we approve the budget and go through our audit next year.
Okay, all right, thank you. So, and the transfers on that same table, and again, I have too many tabs open. So the fund transfers listed on that same page shows 1.9 million for budget 21-22 because that's the budgeted number, but that's not the actual number. So, so we have an ending unassigned fund balance after that transfer of 9.5 million because that was the budgeted number, which you've carried forward to the budget 22-23, right? But because that doesn't include the 3.7 million we just discussed, and I know we haven't transferred it yet, but we just discussed that item. So that number, that budget number of 9.5 million for 22-23 is also, it's $3.7 million at least wrong, right?
Correct, but that's going to be real at that point, right? So we can make that adjustment. We're going to really make that, and so this will change to 1.9 million plus 3.7, you know, to reflect our current transfers for the year.
Plus the savings and expenditures for this year. I mean, we have some savings on that one-page chart.
We have savings, but again, that won't be completed until our audit is completed, right? So those are moving targets throughout this, even the summer months as we run the teacher payroll and things like that. So those numbers will continue to fluctuate until we run our final trial balance for our auditors at the end of August.
Okay. So Art, I think that was I think we've covered all the things you and I discussed this afternoon, right? Okay. All right, any other comments or questions on the budget narrative or the budget presentation? Okay, so let's move on to the next item, which are the actual resolutions that we would pass on Monday night. You want to introduce that before I?
Sure, I'll just quickly introduce it. So there's, every year as part of the final budget, and again, these are drafts, there are 3 resolutions that the board approves. So obviously, everything that's in all these packets plays into these final resolutions. The final budget adoption resolution is just simply that. The real estate tax resolution sets the millage rate and the tax payment periods. The tax payment periods don't typically change. They're pretty standard from year to year. And then the homestead farmstead is a required resolution based on what we talked about tonight, the final state budget information. So it's really the real estate tax resolution that we're talking about tonight.
Okay. So in the resolution as written, it's with the 2.3% tax increase that we've been using as a placeholder since last month. Now is the time for us to make any adjustments to that if we wish to before Monday night. And of course, we can make adjustments on Monday night as well. What we're talking about now is really a recommendation from this committee to the full board on Monday night, and then the full board, and we'll have everyone there, I hope, to contribute to that discussion. So it's possible it could change again on Monday night. But right now we're talking about what the recommendation should be from this committee. And what I think we're talking about is really, as Andy alluded, we're talking about what the tax increase number should be as a percentage balanced against what we think the planned fund transfer should be. We don't actually have to do it that way. If we wanted to use some unassigned fund balance to balance the budget, we could do that and also have a planned transfer or not if we wanted to do that. But based on conversations I've had with members of the committee and members of the board over the last week or so, my understanding is we're really going to be talking about what the tax increase should be balanced against a planned transfer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around the table. I'll start with the members of the committee, ask everyone else to chime in where that number should be, and then eventually we'll vote on a recommendation to go forward. I want to start with, a reminder, this is our first chance at a balanced budget in a while. It sounds like everyone wishes to stick to that. That is, revenues equal expenses. That's a huge achievement. We should be proud of that. We should do everything possible to maintain that going forward, in my opinion. In my opinion also, and again, I want to stress this is my opinion, not necessarily the opinion of the committee or the rest of the board or the district, but I think we're done borrowing for a while. There are things that could come up if we decided we wanted to do a big project at Jarretown or Fitz, or if we decided we needed to buy land for a bus garage, maybe we need to borrow. But I hope we don't have any borrowing to do in the next few years. So I think we're done borrowing, but we know we have $30 to $40 million worth of capital projects to do, as we've been talking about, and the way we're going to pay for that is with transfers to capital reserve. So I think it's critically important to have a planned transfer to capital reserve. Right now, we've got a 2.3% tax increase with $819,000 worth of transfer. That's not nearly enough. Going forward, we've seen that the recommendation is $1.5 to 3% of total replacement value. Is that a fair way to phrase that? Which works out to $3 to $4.5 million annually. We do know we have a surplus every year. We can, I think, reasonably expect some amount of surplus every year. We usually transfer a chunk of that to capital reserve. But I think we really need to get into the habit every year of having a planned transfer to capital reserve, a significant one. It doesn't necessarily have to get all the way up to the 1.5 to 3%, but it needs to be our habit, just the norm, that we have a planned transfer to capital reserve every year to fund capital projects, because they never stop. We have 8 facilities that will always need work. And if you want them each to last, 60 years, making up a number, but, whatever that number is, you have to constantly be paying into that. I mean, it's either borrowing or plan transfer or both. If we're done borrowing, we have to transfer. So with that, and, I'll also point out that if we regularly set aside money to capital reserve, then in the future, when sometime we do want to borrow again, we have capacity in the budget right there to afford debt service. If we don't have that kind of plan transfer, then there's no obvious source for money for debt service for some future borrowing in the distant future, hopefully distant future. So, so it's really, really important that we have a regular plan transfer of a significant amount of money. $1 million or $2 million, I would say, is a reasonable target. We don't have to get there this year if we're just starting a new habit, but, and I know we've had big surpluses, we've had big transfers. We just talked about a $3.7 million transfer. Last year we had a $5 million transfer. Those are big numbers, but those were based on one-time events, not based on regular planned future planning. So with all that said, so I'm at 2.3 and 819 as written because I don't want to go lower than 819 for now. I do hope that between now and June, maybe there's a little more room, but that's where I am right now. So Jenna, Titia?
Sure. I agree with Mark that the way the budget is set for now and looking forward, we should stick with what is here in the current budget, so 2.3 for me.
Jenna?
Yeah, so Mark, you said, I wrote down 3 things that I agree with wholeheartedly. The first one is I think it's wonderful that we have a balanced budget. And again, I echo that it's a huge achievement and something that we should be shooting for every year. Number 2, I think, well, of course, as you said, we can't predict that we won't have more debt. I don't think we are planning for any more. So, that means that as we look ahead to the, 30 million over the next 5 years and another 10 million after that, our hope is to be able to fund that ourselves. And then number 3, I do agree that transfers to the capital fund are just critical and to have them budgeted in. And then, of course, if we have a surplus, that's great. But, as I'm looking, even with the 3.7 million we just transferred in, our capital reserve is only at, a little 15.5-ish. And again, 30 million in 5 years, we're only halfway there. So, at this point, I'm at 2.3 also.
All right. Other members of the board want to chime in? Anyone? Jeff?
So going down Jenna's list of 3 things in Mark's list, I agree wholeheartedly that the balanced budget is impressive and something to be proud of and something we don't want to touch. I also agree wholeheartedly that we have to grow the capital reserve. And I think the transfer we talked about before of the 3.7 is very important. I think some amount of capital reserve transfer in the budget we're talking about is also very important. At the same time, I kind of look at the numbers and the deltas we're talking about, and I question a little bit whether, because we're kind of embarking upon a new threshold here, do we need to do the entirety of the 819,706, which is a very specific number, like Andy said, to capital reserve right now? I think we should embark upon a planned transfer every year. I think that's very prudent and it makes sense. There is a side of me that says, looking at Andy's alternate option of 2, it's a $500,000 versus the 819,000 round numbers. There's a little bit of change on that. So I guess where my head is especially given that things might change a little bit between now and June, shaving off a little bit of that capital reserve, my instinct at the outset of the meeting was to say, what if we went in the middle at 2.15? I then kind of upped it up a little bit because I think getting to like 700 or 750,000, again, I think in round numbers, is maybe a goal as a starting platform. So the number, as odd as it may sound, that I would throw out there is 2.17, which gets us just about at that $700,000 or so number. Could I live with 2.3? Sure, I could, for all the reasons we talked about. But I think there's a little bit of ability here to do what we want and set a threshold, but lower the tax increase just a smidge. So put me at the 2.15, 2.17 range right now.
All right, thanks. Anybody else? Darlene? Art? Darlene?
I can certainly support the 2.3. Obviously, I would love to see it lower. I mean, I think we all would. But I think that I trust in the work that you're doing, and I know the work's not over yet. So I know we're at 2.3, and I will certainly support that. I know there are a lot of things that are still happening. More income is coming. I mean, things are changing, constantly. And so my hope is that some of those things continue to change so that we can get that number a little lower. I do believe we need to, transfer the money in because these projects aren't going away. And the longer we delay some of them, the more expensive they will become. And so I just, think it's critically important for us to transfer money in for those reserves so that we can pay for it and not borrow in the future. But my hope is that some other things will change, that you'll find some either additional revenue or something else will change you can look at within the budget itself and get that number a little lower.
All right, thanks. Jen?
I thank you, Andy and Dr. Yanni, for all your transparency and your presentations and the town halls that you've done explaining the budget process. I have full confidence in you, and I'm comfortable with the 2.3%. That capital projects, I am concerned about those, so I'm comfortable transferring that full $819,000. That's it for me.
Art?
I'm not comfortable with 2.3. I think we can do 2. I think, I see on that one-page chart, Andy, the revenue and expense projection report. I see the 3.7 that we're transferring, but we still have 4.5 million in expenditures that we haven't spent. That number could come down. So I think we could do, I predict that when we look at the budget in June, we'll see we can still do a transfer of 800,000, 900,000, and tax increase of 2%. I think it's going to get better. We have not calculated any increase whatsoever with BEF funding, the state funding, or special ed funding. So can we find an additional 255,000 by the end of June? I think we will. And in that case, I really think that we should do the 2% tax increase. It's a difference of $95 versus $74 a household. I think getting it under 75 for an increase, I think when they get those tax bills, they'll finally see that, we're taking seriously that how high our taxes are, and that we're being sensitive to the needs of the community, especially these days, with so many things, with the inflation increases. And so I think we'll be able to transfer what we need, at least the 819, and do a tax increase of 2%.
Okay. I will add that I did, so Mike Henderson couldn't be here tonight, but I did talk to him about this. And his number, I'm reluctant to put words in his mouth, but his number was 2.25. What I think I heard there, anyone else have anything to say before I try to summarize that?
I just want it's so nice to see a budget presentation where we don't talk about the structural deficit. It's been, I think, 22 years, well, I haven't heard that term, but at least 10 years, I've heard the term, a structural deficit. And thank you, Mr. Leckman and Ms. Balisano and the entire team and Dr. Yanni for, removing those two words from our vocabulary.
All right. So what I heard was members of the committee were in 2.3, 3 at 2.3, 1 at 2.25. There were others lower. Of course, we'll have another discussion about this on Monday. Andy, I assume we're not expecting to see different numbers by Monday. We're not going to see changes. It'll be in June if we see changes. So my recommendation would be we stick with what's published for the recommendation, and we'll have a vote on Monday where we may change it. Are members of the committee comfortable with that? Okay, so we'll.
Yes, I mean, and just to be clear, what we're kind of, recommending at this point is to just keep the 2.3% placeholder, but to your point, as work continues, that may come down, which would be fabulous, but this is not a final number that, even on Monday, it won't be a final number until we get to June. So I just want to make that clarification for anybody listening.
That's right, and I think, if we're making that clarification, we can say at this point, with reasonable confidence, it's only likely to go down. So members of the committee will move this recommendation forward as written?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. That's the big one. Let's move on to the property tax rebate program.
Yeah, so in May 2020, the board approved a new property tax rebate program. It was modeled after North Penn's program, and since then, a number of school districts locally and across the state have implemented a similar program. Each year, this becomes a resolution that the board needs to consider and approve, so it's set for an annual basis. The basis for the program is a tax rebate program with the state of PA that they've had in place for a number of years. So a property owner or renter is first eligible for the state program. They must apply and be approved and receive reimbursement from the state. And then if they are approved through that process, they submit all the proper paperwork to the district for our rebate. So the state program has levels of rebates. It's based on income levels. There's supplemental amounts for some areas based on, and our township, Upper Dublin Township, meets the criteria for supplemental. The state rebates range from $375 to $975 depending on income levels. The district's current resolution provides for a 50% rebate of the total state rebate. So our current rebate provides rebates of $187.50 up to $487.50. So included with the agenda are a couple different attachments. So you have the actual resolution with a bunch of things highlighted in there, again, depending on what's approved tonight. The goal would be to approve it tonight so we can have everything ready to go for the board meeting. Page 39, which is an attachment, but in the packet, page 39 is the pro forma. And in our second year of the program, about 16% of eligible households applied for and were approved for the rebate. And the total rebates we've paid out to date are around $8,200. Based on that same rebate of 50%, at 100% eligible households participated, we would pay out at about $52,000 if everybody participated. That's down from prior years. So again, we get all of our data from the state off of their website. The data, there's fewer households that seem to be eligible. So the amount eligible for homeowners to submit to the district is down as well. And then page 41 is the annual communication, which we send. So again, the way we communicate this is with tax bills that go out. If the board approves this again, we would have a communication that goes out with the tax bill in the same envelope. On the front side is the communication. On the back side is the actual form that needs to be submitted. That's how we roll forward with the process. So if the board is amenable to continuing this resolution, I guess the questions are, do we approve the resolution for next year? And if yes, do we maintain the same rebate rate at 50%, or is there some change to that rate for next year?
Comments or questions from the committee? Titia?
Yeah, is there any impact on this for people who are displaced from and got some relief in other ways on their taxes?
Yeah, no, this is only for, so you mean like like folks affected by the tornado? No, this, again, it's the state program. There is nothing that would be benefit tornado damage homes.
And just so that it's clear, the county for homes that were damaged by the tornado, they reduced their assessed value by 50%, and that's not, the district has nothing to do with that.
And to be clear, that reduces the property tax bill by 50%, not counting the homestead reduction, which is flat. But, so that's a much more significant savings than this provides, but this is really about low income. It's about income, not property. Jenna?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think this is a great program. I'm really happy that we implemented this a couple years ago, so I definitely want to see it continue. My decision is more about, should we change the percentage? It's at 50% today. I don't know what sort of impact it would have if we did increase it, but, I think that's something I would be willing to consider.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I'll just say up front, I think we should just jump to 100. That probably more than doubles the amount we expend, because not only does that double it because we'd pay those eligible households twice as much, but I would think that more people might bother to participate just because it's more money and it's worth the effort, or more likely to be worth the effort. What we're really saying here, as I've said before, is that the state program is inadequate. It provides not nearly enough, and so we're supplementing it because we recognize that, and we can. And it effectively amounts, I want to be, acknowledge the truth of the situation. This amounts to a tax shift from the low-income households to those who can afford it. So it's not that in the end, we have to raise enough revenue to cover our needs, and that ends up coming from the ones who can't afford it. But to me, I think, the state program continues to be inadequate. Even at 100%, it's not a lot. But it's something, and it's that we can make it that much more meaningful an amount without a significant effect on our budget. All right, I see you're champing at the bit.
Yeah, I mean, this was a program that Sarah Johnson and I brought to the administration years ago, and I really thank the administration for implementing the program. Mr. Diasio helped us because at North Penn, he was on the board at that time. So, I'm really pleased to see that we're doing this program. My question is, do we know what some of the other districts are moving to? I mean, I was going to suggest we increased it, but I wasn't thinking about increasing it to 100% yet. But, I was thinking, what would be the implication if it was 75%? What's North Penn doing now? I think last year they were higher than our 50%. But I do agree that this is a great program. We need to really do whatever we can to communicate better to those people that can take advantage of this program. I don't think, it's happening as much. And if we work with some of our state reps, there's now, there'll be 2 of them now in Upper Dublin to help, maybe they can help also promote the program. But I think definitely we should be continuing it. And for an increase, I'm not sure about 100% right now. But Mr. Leckman would need to tell us the implication of moving to 100%. Obviously, we know it would be twice as much, assuming it's the same number of households.
Darlene?
Well, he said already that there's a decrease in the number of families that actually qualify. So even if we did raise it, it's not going to double. So I do believe, we may be in a position to increase the amount, whether it's 75% this year and maybe look to 100% the following year, or if we can immediately jump to the 100%. But I think that since we've been running it, we do have some data that indicates how many of our families actually take advantage, and it's not all of them. And again, in Upper Dublin, we have we don't have a lot of families that actually qualify. So I would certainly support increasing that amount. And I would, support a recommendation based on when you run the numbers to see what we can afford. And again, 75% or go to the 100.
Yeah, the current number is 16% participation rate.
Yeah, I
of
mean,
eligible
that's,
households. Yeah.
So just to make sure I'm clear on that, Dr. Davis, it's a good point. So this pro forma reflects the reduced number of eligible homeowners. So there are, at 100% participation rate, it would cost $52,000. So if it was increased to 100%, it would potentially cost $100,000. And to Mr. Schroeder's point, if that increases, are more people likely to take advantage of the program? So 16% today, but if it's higher, you may see a much higher.
Right, so 104,000, basically worst case, if everyone participated and we gave 100% match. But currently, at our current 16%, we're paying $8,000 a year. If we double that to $16,000 a year because we do 100% match, and then there's a slight increase in the participation rate, it goes from $16,000 to $20,000.
right.
I think we should go to 100%.
And
I think you made a good point. If it increases the number of people who participate, I think it's great. And to me, there's some, we talk about, maybe folks can help advertise, being able to say, you can double your state, I think having it be 100%, I think makes that soundbite easier. Yeah, exactly. We'll match it. You can double, I think it just makes it maybe more enticing to people. So I think I'm leaning toward the 100% if we feel like we can afford it.
Mark, you took the words right out of my mouth. Looking at those numbers and those math, I'd support going to 100%.
And I love this program, and I think it doesn't cost us very much, but if you look at to qualify for this, an elderly couple, it's a lot of money, it's a lot of groceries. I think it's a big help. So I support that 100% increase.
All right, anybody else? So what I think I heard was, teacher, you didn't chime in on that,
I agree.
okay. So what I think I heard is continue the program as written, but with 100% match, if you can bring that to us on Monday night, right?
I would agree with 100%.
Yeah.
I didn't know that the board was ready to go to 100%. I think it's great. I mean, we've been working on this for a long time.
All right, so members of the committee will move that forward with the 100% match?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Moving on to item M, electric rate lock recommendation.
Yes, so in the last two budget presentations, I've mentioned the cost of energy markets are extremely unstable right now, so it's having a direct impact. Again, you look around gas prices, electric prices for everybody will go up likely in June for local residential. So what we are looking at, our current electric rate is fixed through May of 2023. It was a 36-year agreement. We work with Amerex as our energy consultant, and they've been communicating with us almost weekly right now. And, they're experts in this market, and they didn't even see some of these increases coming. So as I've outlined in this memo, we're currently paying, 0.046 cents for the supply side and 0.033 cents for transmission. So again, those rates were astronomically low, and I don't think we'll ever see those rates again. And what we're looking at right now is the 0.046 supply side. The transmission side is from PECO, so we don't have a choice on who we use to deliver the electric to us. So we're looking at the 0.046. The chart on the first page of the memo basically shows you what we're looking at right now and how rates have changed so dramatically over the last couple of months. So short-term rates, you can see on the top, 12-month rates have gone from just under 8 cents to over 12 cents, which is a 51% increase. And then longer term rates, while not quite as volatile, have increased 15% over that same time period. So what we're looking at right now is you know, the options available are not great. We either take a short-term view of this and say, let's pay more now because, you know, if we wait now, maybe some of the events that are going on in the world that are driving energy prices will relax and come down. But the impact to that, you can see on page 2, is pretty substantial. Or we take a longer-term view where the rates are less volatile. We lock in rates for 5 years. The world is very unstable now as far as energy markets go, and we just create some stability, yet albeit at a higher rate. Amerex does not see any major events that are going to cause rates to come down anytime soon. Certainly, if the events that are happening in Ukraine and Russia, if that slows down or ends, there may be some impact. But I think there's a long-term impacts to the energy market regardless of what happens over there. So Amerex's recommendation, which I think Mr. Lesser and I agree with, are to lock in at 60 months. So page 2 of the memo sort of lays out what that might look like. So the estimated new rate would be around 11 cents, which is a 39% increase over where we're at today. The all-in rate, right? So comparing the all-in rate. And then we currently have $837,000 in the budget. So that was kind of pinned at the 36-month rate. So right there, if we approve the longer-term rate, based on, again, those are stale rates from last week when I needed to put this out. We have updated rates that show the rates slightly below these rates here, would allow us to take about $70,000 out of our final proposed budget if we lock in these rates, again, at higher amounts. So the recommendation is 60 months. The unknown here, if we take a shorter term view, is we don't know if we are at the ceiling, if we've set a new floor, and this is where we're going to be for years to come. The unknowns are astronomical right now. So our recommendation and Amerex's recommendation is to lock in at 60 months. Questions?
All right, before questions, I just want to highlight, just for anyone who might be listening at home, you misspoke slightly at the beginning. You said it was a 36-year agreement. It was a 36-month agreement. Yep. Just in case that wasn't clear to everybody.
We believe in long-term planning, Mr. Serta.
All right, comments or questions? Jenna, Titia.
Is there, if we go with the 60-month, is there a minimum amount that we need to use, or is there any specification? So if we were to go to major solar and we wouldn't need a certain, as much as we are using now, we're not getting penalized for that?
I don't believe there's any limits, and if there are, I don't think we would get anywhere near what those would be over the next 5 years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's some service limits with PICO, but I don't see us getting anywhere near those.
Jenna.
I'm struggling with this one. The 60 months sounds so long to me. And again, this is all an unknown. So it sounds long to me. I do fear that we're buying at the high, but of course there is the risk that it gets worse. But I don't know. I'm just at the point 60 sounds long to me.
So on those lines, my comment would be buying at the high, but it's at a discount compared to buying a shorter term, and there is real value in stability and predictability for budgeting purposes, et cetera. So I'm comfortable with the recommendation. It could hurt in the long run, but even if it hurts in the long run, like, it's not going to be, we're not talking millions of dollars, and I think there's value in that stability. Presumably, there's a reason why the team is recommending we lock in, and it also could get worse, right? So that predictability, I think, is valuable. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm definitely okay with the 60.
Okay. Jenna, do you?
I don't oppose moving it forward. So
Okay.
I'll decide between now and when we actually vote on it.
Okay. So members of the team will move that forward
Yes.
as written. All right. Thank you. Novacare Rehabilitation Services.
Yeah, so the district uses Novacare Rehabilitation for athletic training services. Our athletic program from Matt Highland said we are extremely happy with the services that we're receiving and recommended renewing the agreement. I do note, which Mr. Highland and I had a number of conversations about, and he did some great research to make sure the pricing was in line. And the pricing is increasing from $47,000 to $58,000 with a 3% increase per year. He surveyed a number of other districts around us locally and expanded outward to make sure these rates were in line. So we felt very comfortable after we saw some of those rates. I think we were just getting a great deal in the past with Novacare. They do great work for us. So the recommendation from Mr. Highland and from myself is to move forward with this agreement for 3 years with Novacare.
Comments or questions?
And that means we're sticking with the same personnel as well, right? And I think that's really valuable because that's been so reliable for our students, our staff, for everybody involved. So I would agree.
Anyone else? Art?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that Katie B., who's been our trainer for, since we moved with Novacare, is unbelievable, dedicated, caring, really supports what we do at Upper Dublin. And, you know, I hope she sees partially, I hope she gets some of these additional increases. I'm not sure, you know, what Novacare takes compared to what they pay their people. But Katie is really fantastic, above and beyond. And is that correct that we get her? Or is that not part of the contract?
I don't think it's written into the contract,
Right.
but the intent is absolutely for her to remain
continue.
on with Upper Dublin.
Right.
The way Novacare works, unless we request a change or she leaves, she's with us, and there wouldn't be any reason for us to request anyone else.
No. Thank you.
Darlene?
No, I would certainly want us to continue with them because of the person that we have servicing our students. She's phenomenal, and she has a great voice as well, and sings for, you know, for at games, and she really cares about our kids, and has a true investment in our community. So would certainly support, you know, keeping them on board.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? All right, members of the committee, we'll move that one on then.
Yes.
Okay. Athletic agreement with Under Armour on the runaround.
Yes, this is an agreement for the procurement of athletic uniforms. So all athletic uniform purchases are in line with our athletic department budget and long-range uniform replacement plan. So that's part of the budget planning process that we go through. We have a 5-year plan for the replacement cycle for uniforms. So this is in line with that. This agreement would lock in CoStar's pricing, which again, CoStar's, we have access to that pricing, but it also guarantees a stock of uniforms, which has become more difficult over the last year. So I don't know that it explicitly says that, but we will have access through this agreement to have access to uniforms. We've had trouble procuring uniforms this year where we've had stuff procured and the vendor has come back and said, sorry, we can't fulfill that for you. So it's been a challenge with all the other supply-related items that are out there in the market. So Mr. Highland recommended this. The agreement is with Runaround, but it's for, which is a local company in Abington. You can see his memo in here. A number of our teams already use the Runaround for procurement of their own athletic gear for the teams. It is to procure Under Armour uniforms, so it's kind of a tri-party agreement. And per the memo from Matt, the Runaround would standardize and bring consistency to uniform procurement and their refresh cycles. So he recommends this. I highlighted a couple items in here because this was not finalized, it's draft. We have resolved all of these items as of yesterday with Under Armour and the Runaround, so all of these will be updated and it'll be a finalized agreement if the committee moves this forward for Monday night's board meeting.
Comments or questions?
they are an Ambler, and they do a lot of work with many of our teams, and I think it's a great partnership with Under Armour and Run Around to document this proposal.
And I would just like to add, you know, when uniforms are bought, they're big ticket items. You really get what you pay for, and with the Under Armour quality, they tend to last longer. So you might pay a little bit more upfront, but the lifespan of those uniforms is much better.
And I guess then Run Around does the embroidery and the logos and all, and it's consistent, which is great.
Anyone else? Okay, so we'll move that forward.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. All right, termination of the food services agreement with.
Yes, we are, with Kristen Deli, our food service director, recommending ending an agreement with Fairwald Academy. So we've had an agreement with Fairwald since 2018. Fairwald Academy is a local approved private school, and we've been providing food services to them since that time. So for a number of reasons, primarily the staffing concerns being the largest issue, is why we're recommending terminating this agreement. So over the last month, we have not been able to staff that facility. So we typically have a cook and a general worker assigned to that facility. They've both left. We've not been able to fill those positions. You know, across the district, those are incredibly difficult positions to fill and keep people in. So really one of the issues is we're not able to live up to the services we agreed to in that. I know Fairwald's been, you know, a little bit concerned with our ability not to meet their needs there. So we've been delivering cold meals to them to make sure kids are fed and have access to food. I know Kristen's going to have a staff member over there for the rest of the year kind of to deliver those cold meals and make sure all kids have access to food. But long term, this is just, it's unfortunately not a sustainable relationship for us. Kristen did follow up with PDE just to make sure there were no issues there, and there's no issues from PDE's standpoint. And our current agreement, which I attached, does allow for a 30-day out. So we would give them to the end of June and just let them know that we need to kind of move on from this agreement. We've been in constant communication with them over the last 2 months with some of the challenges that we've been having. So that's the recommendation is to terminate our agreement.
Comments or questions? Certainly a regrettable situation. You know, I feel frustrated that we're unable to do that because of staffing, but staffing is a real concern across the country right now, not just here in Upper Dublin. It's a shame that Fairwald is the unfortunate victim of a staffing challenge, but we have to do what we have to do. If we can't deliver, we can't deliver.
And I would say that's not for lack of trying on the district's part that this is happening. So, and at least we'll work out the rest of the school year, which I think is important, that those students will get food.
Other comments? All right, so we'll move that forward.
Yes.
Yes, okay. And last up, we have a settlement stipulation for a district-initiated appeal.
Yeah, so last up is again, good news. So we have, under the board policy 605, we did district-initiated appeals. We had assessments done by Valbridge. They turned back a number of properties. We continued to work through and negotiate with a number of property owners. This one worked out very well for the district. It's a significant increase of $256,000. So in order to achieve the settlement at just below our appraisal, it was agreed that neither the district or the property owner will appeal this settled stipulated assessed value for 2 years. This is not included in the budget projections. Again, so while this is a nice pickup, we do, just a reminder, we have a number of open large commercial assessments that sit out there. So certainly we'll plan this into the budget again if it hits the assessed value that we reconcile out to by the end of the year. It probably won't because it takes time to get through the county. But again, this will be a nice win to kind of offset any negative impacts from assessment appeals because they're out there and we're working on them. So any questions?
Comments or questions? Lulu Country Club. Any other comments or questions? Okay, so we'll move that forward.
Yes.
Yes, okay. We are up to public participation. So there's none in the room, but we do have one that came in through the form. All right, I've got it. I'll read it. So this is from Ginny Vitella, Ambler. Tornado. There's still so much debris lying around. When can we expect that the properties, broken signs, trash, and debris will be cleaned up? Any tree planting scheduled on school properties? The varsity baseball field, maybe the JV2, are not yet ready and the season is almost over. What's the current holdup? Strategic Action Committee. Another goal that I think should be included is better and more robust collaboration with our township, even a committee perhaps for cost savings and a cohesive plan for the future, and work towards a common goal on behalf of the UD residents. Example, we are supposedly adding $2 million in revenue from the promenade. Where is the money? Why are we getting a tax increase of 2.3% if we're building up so much of our open space for high-density housing? What are the costs and unintended consequences to our schools and our community? Camera system for new SRMS. Is the $96,296 included in the original SRMS construction budget? Budget and tax increase. If our assessments increase tax revenue by $1.6 million and revenues are at 93% of budgeted with 2 months left in the year, $10 million in reserves, why a 2.3% tax increase? Wasn't the point of so much high-density development to increase the tax revenue so we could reduce our tax increases to the residents? Transfer to capital reserve. Can't some of the $3.7 million be allocated to a lower tax increase? CARES. What are the plans to spend the $1.7 million of CARES funding? And with that, I will close public participation and see if there are any responses from the administration or members of the committee or board.
So I'll start with fields. The varsity baseball field, we have been told multiple times by our professionals working that the earliest that that field is going to be ready is August. So there's nothing that we can do to expedite that. Supply chain issues, staffing issues, and also the fact that drawings have to be done, permits have to be had, and there is a gas line that runs under that field. So that complicates things just a bit. We have made accommodations. Our baseball team has been playing at Villanova and at Temple, and as recently as today, a student remarked how great it is to play, particularly at Villanova. The CARES money and ESSER money, I believe all of that information is on the website. Collaboration with the township, I think there always needs to be collaboration with the township. I think sometimes folks think that because we're one township, one community, that there are tremendous cost savings measures. We have a unionized workforce here in the district, so we can't do shared services, for example, with the township. So we are limited in what we can do. That said, I do look forward to working collaboratively with the new township manager. In terms of using one-time revenue to offset a tax increase, just like we don't want to use fund balance for recurring expenses, we don't want to use one-time funds to offset a tax increase. Thinking, what did I miss?
There were a few others. I'll comment. One comment was, wasn't the point of the high-density housing to offset tax increases? No, the point was because the property owners wanted to build something, and so they built it. But a side effect of that is that we do get more property tax revenue. The promenade is not fully assessed yet, but we are getting a sizable. They're already our #1 taxpayer, and they're not fully assessed yet. So that, where is the money? Well, it's already in our budget. And that is a big part of why we can afford a 2.3% tax increase that is a balanced budget and includes a planned transfer, which is in a rising Act 1 environment, way below the Act 1 index, much further below than we've ever been before. This 2.3% in the current climate, I think, has to be regarded as a low tax increase. In the past, I've pointed out that our tax increases have been below the median of southeastern Montgomery County, and even if we can get down further, great, but 2.3% is still almost certainly going to be below the median of southeastern Montgomery County. So, that money is there and is offsetting the tax increase. Did anyone else have anything else to comment on public participation? Okay, so with that, I will announce that our next Finance Committee meeting will be held Monday, June 13th. Again, that's a Monday, not our usual Wednesday or even this month's Tuesday. So Monday, January 13th at 6 p.m. Oh, January. I get my J months confused, I guess. Monday, thank you, June 36 months from now. Monday, June 13th, 2022 at 6 p.m. here in the Cardinal Room, and with that, we are adjourned.